Hello, beautiful people, and welcome, to the banner review for Risley's banners. He is being paired with Dori, Toma, and Chongyun. This is not a very good banner. It has something going for it with the fact that Toma is a fairly decent unit now, but he's still not that amazing. And then Chongyun and Dori are both 100% definitely characters of all time. We also have Venti running along with him. Okay, let's get into this. Risley is fairly underwhelming, or he's looking fairly underwhelming. I don't have particularly high hopes for him. He'll be fine, but definitely not on the same level as some of the other like actual good 5 stars. Really just like only if you really like him would I recommend him. His constellations, C1 is pretty nice, and when it comes to the rest, you can check out the Risley pre-release, which hopefully should come out before this, but if it's not out yet, then it'll be coming out in the next few days. As usual for the banner reviews, we're gonna talk about the 4-star characters and their constellations. Chongyun has never been a great character. He saw some play very early on when people used him in National, but he was never very good in National. He's always just like, oh wow, you can trigger a melt instead of a vaporize. Woohoo! I heckin' love Genshin Impact. He just doesn't really provide enough. His skill, like the elemental infusion, can be marginally kind of useful, but most of the time it doesn't really do enough, and that's kind of all he has because his skill doesn't really do anything else, and his burst just doesn't really do that much. Yeah, it's front-loaded, but it's not a lot of total damage, and it's just not really enough. You get some attack speed on melee characters, which is fine, I guess, but it's really not that much. The main use for Chongyun, I've found, is once you get his Constellation 2, his elemental skill starts giving you cooldown reduction. It's 15% cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction is good to have. It's just always a nice, useful stat, but it's basically the only thing that Chongyun provides that is really meaningful in almost any team where you end up using him, and because of that, it's just not enough. That being said, though, if you want to play him anyways, you think he looks cool, I won't be the one stopping you, and if you do, his C1 doesn't really do that much because you don't really care about getting to the end of your normal attack combo to begin with. His C2 is obviously his biggest constellation. C3, kind of nice, increases burst damage, and his skill doesn't really do much damage, so it's most of his damage that's being increased here. C4 doesn't do that much. You generally don't want to be hitting enemies that are affected by cryo with Chongyun. The teams where like he does damage are generally teams where you want to melt his burst, and when you're melting, right, you're hitting enemies affected by pyro, which means that they cannot be also affected with cryo, so this won't work. If you're playing him in mono cryo with like Shenhe and another character, he doesn't want to be on field because he's not very good, and if he's not on field, then he's not hitting enemies affected by cryo because he's not hitting enemies at all. C5 does basically nothing. C4 is, I guess, his best constellation for personal damage. It's pretty nice. Yeah, someone in my Twitch chat is raising a good point. When it comes to actual meta applications, Chongyun doesn't exist until you have C6 Shenhe. And when you do, he's pretty decent because you can use C6 Shenhe plus Chongyun to make any melee character a cryo carry, and you can make literally any character at least somewhat decent. Next we have Dori. The biggest issue with Dori is that she's pretty energy reliant. Like she's very ER hungry. She's gonna need a lot of ER in her build, and the only things that she really does in meaningful ways is her application, but it doesn't last long enough. Basically, the main thing that makes Dori not that good is the fact that Kuki exists, and that Kuki does basically everything she does but better. To be fair, Dori does heal more than Kuki, and to some extent that can matter. I mean, especially if you have C6, you can actually heal a decent amount, but in most teams, you don't need that much healing. And her healing is not AoE, it's only on one target, so it's not even great healing. It's just like slightly better, unless you have C6. But even at C6, you have to on-field her to gain that healing, which isn't something you really want to do. Her skill is basically just energy generation. Her burst has the issue that it just doesn't last long enough, and it doesn't have constellations that increase its duration. All in all, Dory's just not very good. She's pretty funny in co-op because like every single player connects to the genie. She has the upside of being able to hit Hyperloom seeds a lot more often than other Electro characters because of how often her link to the Electro Lamp or the Electro Genie like pulsates, I guess. But in the absence of a reliable way to generate seeds fast enough for that to matter, the fact that she has lower uptime on her burst than other potential Hyperloom triggers means that even then you still just don't get as much the Hyperloom damage as you would get with other characters. She also generates energy with her burst, but it's only to the active character and it's not that much. Constellations, C1 slightly increases E damage. By getting an additional shot, you go from 3 hits to 4 hits, which lets you hit your hit-based ICD, so you do 2 electro applications on your E instead of 1, which if you're playing Quicken will get you some more damage, but if you're not, doesn't really do anything. C2 helps you with electro application as well. C3 is the burst. It doesn't really do much, again, because it makes you heal a little bit more. It doesn't actually increase the energy generation for talents past level 10, and technically it increases the damage, but the damage is such a joke that it's not doing anything relevant. C4 is okay. It makes it so that your burst heals a lot more for low HP characters and restores a bit more HP to a little bit more energy to low energy character, but it doesn't do that much. C5 E damage doesn't do much either. C6, she gains the possibility to get an electro infusion after using her skill. Her skill cooldown at base is 9 seconds, but she has a way to reduce its cooldown through her Ascension 1. So if you play him with Thundering Fury, you can get semi-permanent electro infusion, and you can use it to heal a lot. It's alright. All in all though, none of these constellations are all that relevant. Like, the C6 itself can be nice. It can let you do some pretty funny stuff for like on-field Dory, but outside of that, Finally, we have Thoma, who is the one good character on this matter. Thoma is a fairly strong character at C0. C1 doesn't really matter that much because the cooldown reduction isn't enough to get 2 skills per rotation, and the cooldown isn't long enough that you would need cooldown reduction to get it every rotation. Basically, it doesn't reach any breakpoints to actually give you more skills or bursts, so it doesn't really do anything. C2 is nice. It increases his burst duration. C3 is skill. It's fine. C4 is arguably his best constellation. It restores 15 energy after using his burst. It's very nice. C5 is burst level, and C6 normal charge and plunge attack buff by 15% to your whole party while your burst is active. It's not exactly while your burst is active, but it's basically while your burst is active, kinda. He's pretty good. His constellations, even on an EM build, the talent constellations still matter because it still makes the shield bigger, which is relevant at the end of the day. Yeah, getting his constellations up to C4 can be nice, but he's still a functional unit at C0 in the teams where he works, so they're not like necessary. All in all, banners are pretty bad, right? When the best character on your banner is Thoma, you know it ain't looking too hot. I do want to talk a little bit about Venti. I think Venti is a character that tends to be a bit overlooked in general. What he does is never going to be something that you need for like an optimal version of a team, right? Like there's no carry where like, oh yeah, their best team wants Venti. Not really. Venti is there to make your life a lot less annoying when you're doing the sort of content that you've already outscaled. Now the reality is that if you have decent investment in your characters, you've outscaled floor 12 too. But also for the other floors, when you've significantly outscaled the content, it's just annoying to do. Venti's also very useful for what is really a pretty significant portion of the Genshin Impact daily experience, which is your artifact farming or whatever resin spending activity you do. And he is still pretty good in some chambers in floor 12. Now, ever since Inazuma came out, so basically ever since 2.0, Hoyo has made sure to go out of their way to never really put a side where Venti is really good on each chamber. So you're gonna have a side where Venti's really good on chamber 1, but then he won't be good on chamber 2. They've been like making sure that they keep floor 12 12 like this, so that Venti isn't just the most broken unit in the game. Now, if you want to have a unit that will always feel as strong as they can be in floor 12, then Venti is not a good unit for you to get. But he does have strengths outside of that, and if that's something that you're interested in, he might be worth considering. Then we got the weapon banner. Risley's signature weapon is pretty good on him, but it's not even much better than the Bell, the Wanderer signature. That being said, Elegy is a nice weapon to have. The 5 stars are average to above average, I guess. The 4 stars are interesting. All right, 5 sword, obviously broken. We love 5'd around here. Eye of Perception, obviously dog shit. Rain Slasher, not great. Has some niche use, but isn't the best weapon. But now what's interesting is the 2 new weapons, right? So let's talk about them very quickly. All right, they have the same passive. Literally, the only thing that's different is the weapon type and the name. High base attack substat, which is all right. Attack substat is never like ideal, but if you are gonna have attack substat, then it's always better to have high base attack and low substat than low base attack and high substat. So at least there's that. Now the effects are fairly interesting. It's whenever you're healed or you heal someone, you gain a stack of the passive, and when you use your burst, it consumes the stacks to gain a buff. And the buff is 3% attack and 7% damage bonus for each stack. Well, elemental damage bonus for each stack, so up to 9% and 21. At high refine, it goes to 7% and 13. It increases by 1% attack and a 1.5 damage bonus. It's not actually the same scaling as it usually is for weapons, similar to the racist weapons. Characters that can actually make use of this, right? 9% attack and 21% damage bonus is actually pretty nice for a passive. Like, you compare it to like what you consider a pretty default decent 4-star weapon, like Lion's Roar. It is 20% damage, right? Dragon's Bane, 20% with a condition. Here you also have a condition, but on top of that, about 20% damage, you also gain attack. It's like a slightly above average effect, but it needs to be characters that can be healed. And one thing that can be important to mention is that Bennett doesn't heal unless you're actually low HP. So it is only going to work when you're playing actual healers. I don't think they're all that amazing. I don't think either of these weapons are all that amazing. Not that they're bad, just that there's no one that really needs this. Like, I can't really think of a character that doesn't have 4-star options right now, or good decent 4-star options right now, that would really benefit from something like this. Maybe Xiao, but a lot of people play Xiao with Bennett, so you'd struggle to get stacks on this. I guess you could use it on Shenhe, but I'd use Fab over this any day of the week. I think Fab is better than Shenhe's signature, so it's sure as gonna be better than Prospector's drill. But yeah, like they're good weapons, but they're not amazing weapons, right? They're not the kind of weapons where you're like, ooh, this is a Fab weapon. Which means we can basically just defer to, or we can decide how good the banner is based on the other weapons. And looking at Fab Sword, Eye of Perception, Rain Slasher. Fab Sword is very good. Eye of Perception and Rain Slasher are not. And then with those 2 4-star weapons being pretty average, this is not the best weapon banner. It could be worse, but at the end of the day, usually people who consider going for weapon banners will have good weapons. And then these 4-star weapons, because they're not really support weapons, because there's only 1 Fab on the banner, there's just not that much to gain from a banner like this. This is definitely more of a pass, more of a skip than average. But yeah, that's it for the banner review. For those of you who are going on either Risley or Venti, I hope you manage to get them early and don't have to waste too many wishes on this lineup. Same thing for those of you going for the signature. Good luck, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, YouTube.